Welcome to Do Your Dailies, the podcast designed to help you on your journey of addiction recovery. We're going to go through the big book of AA and use our collective experience, strength, and hope to help you understand what addiction recovery really looks like. So grab some snacks, sit back, press play, and dig deep. Thanks for being here. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Do Your Dailies podcast. This is Chris, and I'm here with Joe. How are you today so far?
I'm doing really well. I've been looking forward to meeting today and jumping into Chapter 4. This is going to be a really good opportunity from my perspective to jump into probably one of the most important and fundamentally challenging chapters in the big book, We Agnostics, because it has so many groundbreaking principles and invitations for us to actually start looking at the spiritual path that we need to actually look at, and what exactly, and why do we need to look at people who just don't know or don't understand or don't even have a concept of spirituality. So I've been looking forward to this opportunity to jump into this chapter. And it's a wonderful day to be here with you, Chris. And I just really openly invite the audience to sit with us and go through our reading today, and really take some time to actually maybe take some notes and maybe even ask yourself some of these fundamental questions that we're about to jump into over the next few podcasts.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll be in We Agnostics today. So for you guys following along, page 44. And we say this every once in a while, but if you haven't yet picked up a copy of the big book, please do so. You can get it for free everywhere. You can drop in our office and we'll give one to you. You also can find one on our mobile app, a digital version. That's the Hubble Creek app in the Google Play Store, the Apple, what is that? The Play Store? Whatever it is. The App Store. And so, yeah, follow along. This is really good. We also are uploading a chat bot into the mobile app where you can have a little deeper conversation with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So very exciting. You'll see that on the home screen of our mobile app. So anyway, page 44, We Agnostics. Joe, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Chapter 4, We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you've learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death, or to live on a spiritual basis, is not always easy alternatives to face, but it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life, or else. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you, but cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheist or agnostic. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago, but we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us. No matter how much we tried, we could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Now, I want to kind of stop there, and I want to just point something out, because this is why Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritually based program. Okay, when we're talking about mustering the will or living our life under self-knowledge, we've already kind of explored the fact that self-knowledge alone doesn't do it. Willpower doesn't do it. We need something greater and more powerful in our lives that can marshal our resources. But what's really fundamental with what this just said is that we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. So that fundamentally brings up a question. It's like, okay, what type of power does a human being who is a hopeless alcoholic need in order to really truly combat this issue of alcoholism? And we're about to find out. But if you've been suffering from alcoholism and you don't understand the problem, that's literally what the last few chapters have all been about. Is like, okay, what exactly is the problem? Do you understand what the problem is? Do you understand the key tenets of the disease? And then on top of that, have you actually gone through the process of confirming whether or not you're truly an alcoholic or not? That's what the other chapters have given us. And now we're actually at the forefront of exploring, okay, how then do we as men or women who are dealing with this problem really come to understand what we need to do to challenge this problem in our lives and get out from underneath the burden of it? And that's what we're about to find out. So it starts on the next paragraph on page 45. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously, but where and how were we to find this power? So some fundamental questions and also very direct implications are given to us right there. It's like, okay, we lack the power to actually combat this disease, okay? And then the fundamental question really is, this power, it obviously has to be a power greater than ourselves. In other words, it can't be a doorknob. It can't be something that's man-made. It's got to be something that's outside of ourselves, but has resources that can empower us internally to overcome this dilemma of the power that we don't have. And then, it obviously asks us that question, but where and how are we to find this power? I think that's a fundamental question with what we've already been through. It's like, okay, we have this hopeless condition of mind and body and spirit, and unless we really find a way to actually have an intervention in our lives that will bestow upon us power that we don't have, we're going to stay in that state. So it continues. Now, this is what I find is why Dave sharing this with us, and Chris and I absolutely believe this too. It's like, this needs to be a textbook, and here's why. Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. Okay? Now, fundamentally, the problem that we're dealing with is we're dealing with a lack of power. Okay? And therefore, what we need to do is we need to find a power greater than ourselves that will solve that problem. Okay? Now, this is where it gets important. Earlier in the book, it clearly pointed out to us that the obsession of the mind is that problem. In other words, I've got to have that removed from my life to be able to get into this thing called recovery, because without the obsession being removed, it will persistently be there, that will continue to create a block to really changing my life in a way fundamentally that will get me to a point where I will be free from the issues of the disease of addiction. Okay, so when it says that to find a power greater than yourself which will solve your problem, that's what we're looking for. But I don't think we should have a closed mind to this. I think we need, as men and women, we need to have a very open mind for what's about to occur. That means that we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral, and it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Okay, that's why I said we need to have an open mind, because there's some people that hear that concept, that hear the word God, and they automatically just shut everything off. That's why honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness are essential to this journey to start it successfully and to enter into like the guidelines with which we start actually building freedom. Okay. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hopes rise as we discuss his alcoholic problem and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we had reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. Okay, so I'm not going to take the position that I'm going to tell you what that needs to look like for you. That's not my job. That is just like it's been your job as we've read through the first portions of the book to find out if you've got this problem. This isn't something that somebody tells you you've got a problem with. This is something that the book clearly has advocated. You need to go on this journey and you need to find out if you have these particular issues. If you've got the allergy of the body, the obsession of the mind, the malady of the spirit, if you've really got a problem with self-will, if you've really got a problem with the belief that you've got this problem compared to denial, saying you don't have this problem, that is not something that somebody tells you. It's something that you need to go on a journey for yourself to embrace that concept. I mean, it goes back to step one. You know, we have to come to an honest realization within ourselves that this is a problem, that we have the problem, and that we need to acknowledge that, because the first step in any solution-oriented basis is we have to acknowledge that the problem exists. Okay, and what is that problem? Well, it's clearly pointing out here that lack of power, that was our dilemma. Okay, so in the disease of addiction, we've got to admit that the things that we're doing and how we're doing it are just no longer working. And then from there, what we actually get to do is we get to go on this road to embracing a new chapter in our life of like opening ourselves up to the spiritual nature of like, what exactly does this mean? Is, okay, I've got a problem. That problem is power, and that's the dilemma. Then what it's clearly pointing out here is that the solution to that problem is a spiritual reorganization of somebody's life. Again, that's not my job to share that with you. It's your job to be able to go on that journey and go find that out. Now, with that being said, Chris, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I just want to reiterate this not being a religious program, and that when I speak of a higher power or I speak of God, I'll often use the words "my God," and that's my own understanding. When I think of even the first 3 steps of this program, there's a whole lot of, it's a God of my understanding, God of our understanding, God of my determination. We're not getting into the thick of telling somebody what God is or is not. I don't even know the number of religions that are in this world. And the goal isn't to tell somebody they're wrong or right in that. It's a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Yeah. So there's a collective, like, we're doing something not alone. We're doing something, but we need help. We need support. And we believe that comes from a higher power.
I'd like to just add onto what you've just shared. We're not saying that this is religion. What we're saying is we're saying that this is a spiritual way of living. We're calling it spirituality for all to understand that, but we're not defining it, and we're not saying it has to look like this for you or it has to look like this for you. I think the reality of it is going to come out in what we're about to read. And again, I just invite you to do kind of what the big book has already invited us to do, is let's remain open-minded to the concepts of what's about to be shared, because it's this concept, more than any other concept for me, is so wide-ranging, and the depth of really how far you can get into this doesn't stop, because it doesn't have a bottom. I personally think that the spiritual way of living, it should be an ongoing journey and not one that ever ends. And I say that because I do personally believe that every one of us are dealing with step one every single day. We have to fundamentally come to reorganize ourselves every day and acknowledge that the addiction that we have is our mind. Our mind's not our friend. We're all addicted to multiple things. It's not just drugs or alcohol. Some of us are even addicted to our thinking, and that's also part of what we need to be very aware of too, is that we need to be very, very mindful to look at the things that we think we believe, because at some point, just like the book's inviting us to right now, it's like there's going to be things that are going to challenge us. And we've got to be up for the challenge to look at it honestly and truthfully, to say, okay, this is what's going on.
I want to make a comment before we proceed. In my experience, there's been a lot of times that, we lump this into some sort of religion, and there are many religions who talk about being spiritual, and there are many spiritualities who do not like religion. And some people will say they're intertwined, and others will say absolutely not. They are different. They might complement one another. Yeah. But I know many people some of the most spiritual people that I connect with aren't part of an organized religion. There's nothing wrong with that. I know many amazing people who are very religious, who are very spiritual. I also know very many orthodox religious people who lack spirituality. We're not judging. Yeah. We're not saying one is right, one is wrong. That's not our role. Our intention is to look within ourselves. Where are we at? What are my morals? Yeah. What are my values? What is my concept of spirituality? What does my higher power look and sound like and act like, and those kinds of things? And so I think that this is a great passage for those who maybe think there's something out there, aren't really sure what it is. Okay, pull a seat up to the table. You're welcome here.
I'd also like to remind everybody that in Bill's story, he was very, very anti-religious from the beginning of his story. I mean, he clearly points out that his experience in the war and his experience with religion and his experience with religious people had taught him very clearly some things that were very outstanding to him, but his recovery required him to re-examine it. So when he starts this next paragraph off, I just invite you to also understand that he is not abdicating his own journey in this. In fact, he's acknowledging this to us when he says this: we know how you feel. Okay, so he's acknowledging that for any agnostic or any person that's an unbeliever in this spiritual path, that he's been there. He understands it. We have shared his honest doubts and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With this rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. So he's acknowledging any concept related to challenges that you might have to this belief of his own personal development in this whole process. And again, that's why I'm saying be open-minded. I think everybody will be surprised if you give this an opportunity to look into what he's inviting us to jump into. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance to many individuals who claim to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet, in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for many of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. Okay, so I think that's a great place to actually jump into another invitation. Don't start the journey with a concept that it has to be a certain image, it has to meet certain standards. The idea is that it will become an evolution for everybody. It changes as you change, as your recovery deepens. The idea here is that many of us have been involved in that warring theological system. Many of us have been in that calamitous skepticism where we look at everything and there's not a lot of answers. There's just a lot of drama everywhere. And the idea I think he's trying to impart to us is like, just allow yourself to just stay open. Because I believe what the invitation is that this stuff will come. Okay, continuing. Yes, we have agnostic temperament, have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for many of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. So it doesn't need to be defined, and it doesn't need to coalesce in like one specific thing today. It will come, and it will be like a journey to many of us. So he continues at the bottom of page 46 with this statement. Much to our relief, we discovered that we did not need to consider another's concept of God. Okay, it doesn't have to come from religion. It doesn't have to come from somebody else. It's definitely not going to come from me. So that's a great invitation. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe, underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, and all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding. To those who earnestly seek, it is open, we believe, to all. Now, I really appreciate basically this last paragraph, because what he's basically saying is that the concept is that we have a power of the universe, if you would, a creative intelligence that underlies things but is open enough that whatever that looks like in the heart and mind of whoever is seeking it, to work within the realm of what that looks like, to assist in the journey of that person specifically also dealing with these problems to come to that realization that realm of spirit is broad, roomy, and all-inclusive. In other words, it's not going to be, met with specific circumstances where it's like, okay, you're not included. This is a personal inward journey. That's why the idea for me is that in recovery, it's an inward journey as much as an outward expression of what's going on. The outward expression is, I'm not drinking. Okay. I'm no longer creating drama wherever I go. But the inward journey is like, am I grounded within myself, and have I gotten to a point where I'm okay and I'm accepting myself for who I am today and the journey that I'm on to implement these standards, these codes, to have a transformational experience, a spiritual experience, as the big book has shared with us. So
it also acknowledges I don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And we're not a society who likes to be in that middle ground, that gray area. We want to know.
Yeah.
We have this deterrence around what's behind door number 2. Like, we need to know stuff. We don't sit well with just the kind of that concept of faith. Like, I don't know, things will work out. Mm-hmm. It always does. There was an old Seinfeld episode where Jerry kept finding $20. Like, he always broke even. He'd throw money out the window and then he'd find that same amount of money in his pocket or whatever. I think Elaine did that actually, but he just always broke even. And I'm not suggesting that we should have blind faith, but that when we don't know, that we just accept, I don't know the answer to that right now. Maybe it will come. I'm going to focus on what I do have control over. And then talking about this too, like, I might have some grievances toward my higher power. That why did this happen in life? Why did that happen? Whether it happened to me or to in another country or to someone else or to a client or whatever it is. We find ourselves asking those questions of why and what for, and having some dissonance around, like, how could a higher power do this or that or allow this or that? And we're going to get into that more and more as we continue. But I think it's important for us to, like this is talking about, I don't have to define it completely and don't have to have all the answers, but as soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence or a spirit of the universe, some people call that Mother Earth, some people call that Source, God, whatever it is, just as soon as we admitted that possible existence, we began to be possessed by a new sense of power and direction. It's just incredible.
So that's why open-mindedness is so essential. It's like, even just the possibility, opening that door, of looking into it will put us on a new footing, a new path, is basically what we're being invited to actually look at and to see. And what's really important is what's about to be shared with us, because this is where it gets important, okay? When therefore we speak of God, okay, and this is what I invite everybody to underline, we mean your own concept of God, okay? So whenever you hear that in a meeting, they're not saying their concept. They're inviting you to understand that the reference is whatever works for you, whatever you're working with as far as your paradigm. This applies to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relationship with God as we understood Him. Again, the word God, what does that mean? That means your own concept of God. Okay, so again, when you're reading this in the big book, I just invite you to understand that they're not coming at you with a specific structured perspective that everybody has to embrace. They're saying, start with your concept, and that's enough, and that works. Okay? Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. Okay, and that's also another reason why I said that this has enough depth to it that you could never really get to the bottom of it, but it allows you an opportunity to start anywhere. Okay, and then to continue to grow with that. Now, this next paragraph I find very informative because of the fact that we've got another asterisk that Dave so eloquently shared with us before. So I'm going to invite everybody to understand when I get there, we're going to actually reference the Appendix 2, the spiritual experience again. And I'm going to invite everybody that has not read that to go back and read it again. So starting this paragraph, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderful, effective spiritual structure can be built. Okay? It does not have to be a perspective from a religious body. This is a journey that we all need to go on, and the spiritual experience, if you don't have a basis to understand this, can give you some clarity around what this might look for you and what changes that it actually provides us. But it also gives us a very clear definition of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness being key characteristics that are essential for the process so that we don't get off course and we don't run afoul to the principles that we need to have spiritual experience. Chris, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think just again that willingness, that openness, even a sense of humility that I don't have all the answers. Yeah. I don't know. How can I say that this does exist or this doesn't exist? Either of those two parallel or those two kind of extremes on the spectrum. Like there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of middle ground that we're still discovering. We're still trying to figure out for ourselves. And so again, it talks about as somebody expresses a willingness or an openness, it's not that we're making something up, but it's I'm willing to be open. Then these benefits come.
So I think it's important to just reemphasize this as far as kind of what it's saying. As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. You know, you don't have to coalesce a belief that is like so grounded and structured that you're saying that it's never going to change. We're just saying, I mean, can you at least admit that there within yourself that there is something else out there, and are you open to finding out what that is? And if you can honestly say yes, it's clearly saying you're on your way. Okay, so again, it's not us defining what this needs to be. It's not AA defining it what it needs to be. It's just a sheer state of being where you're willing or open-minded to say, I'm willing to explore this and say that there's something out there related to a power greater than myself that I'm willing to look into, and that's enough.
I heard somebody describe it as a buffet once, and it was, you go to the buffet and you see a lot of things. You don't necessarily have a taste for every single thing that's on that table or whatever. And so take the things that are right for you. Take the things that align, with your taste buds over there, but also spiritually, AA is not asking somebody to go join a religion or be baptized into something, or make those kind of commitments, but it's just, again, pursuing this concept of a power greater than yourself.
So, continuing, and I'm gonna finish this page, and then I think we'll stop there. But it continues. This was the great news for us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently we did all say, "I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes, but I cannot accept as true, the many articles of faith which are as plain as him." So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we had found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitivity, and unreasonable prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. And I'm going to stop right there. I just invite you to understand, I don't believe that this is going to be something that specifically for those who are struggling with the concept of spirituality, that you're just going to embrace it and then not have questions. It's a journey. I think you'll embrace it, and then I also think that there's going to be times where you question it, and that's part of the journey. I think recovery is filled with a lot of questions, specifically in reference to those who struggle with spiritual experiences and spirituality. I appreciate the time that you've given to us, and I hope that if you have any questions that you'll make comments. Please send those to us, because we'd definitely be willing to answer any questions that anybody does provide us. And I hope to be able to communicate with everybody in a way that addresses these particular challenging issues in recovery in a more personal way. Chris?
Yeah, I think this last little section there, if somebody brings up a topic and I notice an internal anger, frustration, pain, whatever is going on there, that's a sign that something needs to be worked through.
Yeah.
And nobody else gets to tell me when or how to work through that. That's a personal thing. However, I've invited some people in my life in to point those things out. So if someone makes a joke to me and I get irritated, if somebody calls me on the carpet and I get irritated, again, these are signs. And we, in this evolution, trying to get better, stronger, healthier, happier, more peaceful, all that stuff, we've got to be willing to look within. And so as we go through these, particularly spirituality, but every recovery topic, if something comes up and I go, and we have that reaction, that's a sign. And again, there's no judgment there, but it's an invitation to look within. And maybe there's an opportunity for somebody to seek out a counselor or therapist or something along a guru, a helping person that would assist them in navigating through healing any pain that might be there.
So within the framework of Alcoholics Anonymous, there are these people called sponsors. If you're new to this and you're in AA, I invite you to get a sponsor. Their specific job is to deal with those particular challenges that you have, to assist you to use the information that's in the book and to use the steps to actually clear that stuff away and to help you more firmly land on the path of recovery. I know that's been mighty helpful to me. And I just invite anybody and everybody else to actually be mindful of that, because sponsorship becomes so critical to that. But it's also, it goes beyond just getting a sponsor. It's also building relationships with people in the meeting and having people that you're leaning on and that know you and that you know them, because it's a fellowship. It's not something that you just go and you're going to meetings. It's something that you've got a network of support to be able to deal with things that are challenging and things that are very social in orientation as well. So keep that in mind. It's not AA isn't supposed to be this boring process. It's supposed to be a very social process that gets us back on our feet, because the one thing that addiction does specifically is it isolates us. And for many of us, we need to learn to get back in the social perspective of how best to socially connect again. And that's something I'd invite everybody to understand. But the process of going back and forth and wondering, are you okay? And then wondering if maybe you're not okay. And then, do I know this stuff? Do I not know this stuff? That's the human condition. It's going to come up. And I don't think it's the newcomers that are dealing with that. I think that's everybody. So please keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks, Jill. And thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Do Your Dailies podcast. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Do Your Dailies Big Book podcast. If you like what you hear and you want more, please like and subscribe and share this show with your friends, with your clients, with your sponsees. That's the best way to support us bringing you more recovery content. You can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and X at Do Your Dailies. This podcast is sponsored by Hobble Creek Health and is edited and produced by Nielsen Digital.